Welcome back, guys. Shanae is joining us from the Sedgwick County Zoo again today, and you guys have a really cool ocean program going on this weekend. Tell us about that and what you brought with you today.
Well, World Ocean Day is an international event to help celebrate our oceans. Many of us, especially living here in Kansas, we forget that over 70% of our planet is water, is ocean. So it's really vital that we think about what our actions here in Kansas can do and how they affect those oceans, because remember, every drop of water eventually goes to the ocean. So I know last month we were here and talked about the our Kansas River cleanup. 9 tons of trash in 3 hours we got out of that river. If we hadn't gotten it out of the river, that could eventually end up into the Gulf of Mexico, affecting many of the wildlife and wild places that are those ocean areas. So we can make a difference here simply by being a little bit more a little smarter about some of the actions that we do.
So this weekend people can come and see some of these type of artifacts, learn about the ocean, and also go to Stingray Cove, which is a really cool addition that you guys have.
It is fun. You know, being able to touch those stingrays and feed them is a pretty unique experience. It's really fun to watch the stingrays and their different personalities as well, but they are the type of animal that can really be affected by ocean pollution. So here at the table we have a huge variety, and we talked about the coral. Coral is such a vital piece of the ocean ecosystem, and when we look at the coral like this, what we often forget is that it is the apartment building for all the little animals that would live in it. So this isn't a coral, this is a foundation that coral polyps have created for them to live in.
It's incredible.
Really neat animals, things like the nautilus, the beautiful shells that we see on both sides of the table, and of course spectacular animals like sea turtles that can live well over 100 years. Those are animals really that we need to think about how our behaviors can impact them, even here in Kansas.
So people want to come out this weekend, Shanae, again really quickly, what's the information they need to know?
So the World Ocean Day will be celebrated right next to the Stingray Cove from 10 to 3. We'll have about 5 or 6 different stations set up where there's games and activities and things to participate in. So really great opportunity for the kids to come out, the families to come out and learn more about oceans.
All right, thank you. You guys go out and have some fun there this weekend. It'll be a blast.